Hey y'all, Flower Plant Killer here, Jessie with Living on a Prayer Flower Farm, and today we're talking about harvesting my favorite filler, basil, and how do we keep it from wilting. Basil. I love the smell of Mrs. Burns' lemon basil, and it is my go-to filler. Look how beautiful that is. You can't go wrong with adding this to a bouquet. My other favorite basil would have to be Mrs. Burns, not Mrs. Burns, cinnamon basil. I love the way it looks, though I was very disappointed because I thought it would smell like cinnamon. It does not smell like cinnamon. It smells more like black licorice. But what we run into with basil is it tends to wilt unless you harvest it just right. So, when do we harvest it? The best time to cut basil is early in the morning, right after sunup or even before sunup. That is, I have found, the best time to harvest basil and the less chance it will wilt. The next best time to harvest basil would be late evening. Probably right before sundown would be the next best time to harvest basil, though it's going to wilt if you do that. But within 24 hours, it should revive and be okay the next day or the day after. The worst time to harvest basil is during the heat of the day. I find anywhere from after 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. is not a good time to harvest basil during the summer. It is, it will wilt and only some of it will revive. So we're going to harvest it 3 different times today. We'll harvest this morning, we'll harvest sometime this afternoon, and in the evening, and then we'll walk through so you can see the different stages of the basil and how each one looks during the different times. So let's go and harvest this morning. Now on this basil, you'll see it doesn't have the flowering head yet, and I like to harvest it in both stages, either with the flowering part coming off of it or without. So we'll go ahead and harvest a few of these. Right here is cinnamon basil, and I'm going to make a nice deep cut. This is what it looks like if you do not pinch your basil when it's still in the seedling stage. And then I'm just going to pull off all these extra leaves. And you want to make sure the cut is nice and deep. So like on this one right here. I'm going to come all the way down as far as I can and cut it. And then strip all the leaves. One, that gives me a longer stem. But two, what that's going to do is it's going to encourage this to branch out more and produce even longer stems. I'll show you in the more established patch what that looks like. And then here I have Mrs. Burns' lemon basil. And once again, all the way down, strip the leaves, producing a nice, long, pretty stem. And since I'm harvesting in the morning, I'm going to put these in water after I've cut a few. If you'd like already long stems, you could have pinched these when they were a seedling, and it would have produced longer stems to begin with. But sometimes we're lazy, especially if you already have an established basil bed. Why pinch if you don't have to? Just let that first cut be your first pinch if you want to. Now some people say that you need to let the stem get a little woody before you harvest it. And let me show you what they mean by that. So by woody stem, we just mean the stem at the bottom is starting to get nice and brown. It's starting to get woody looking. So some of these aren't fully woody yet, and that's okay. There's a chance it'll wilt on me, but I'm still pinching it necessarily. I find that as long as I harvest it in the morning and put it in water, it normally won't wilt on me. So this is my more established basil bed, and I've been cutting on it for a while now. But you can see I got nice long stems thanks to this bed. It's nice and established, and I like, for Mrs. Burns' lemon basil, I like it to have this nice flowering head. It's just really pretty to me to have it sticking out of a bouquet. Ah, there's a spider! Oh dear Lord, okay, not using that stem. There's a spider on it. No, 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 no. I don't do well with spiders, which is probably strange considering I'm a farmer. This is purple Omoroto basil, and if I'm being honest, I hate it. I'm It's pretty, but she tends to not look her best no matter what time I harvest her. But we'll go ahead and harvest her and see what happens. She also has these amazingly long stems. This is the tallest basil I've ever had. I don't know if this is what normal basil looks like, but she gets pretty tall. Also, really don't like the way she smells. She stinks. Also, word of warning, I don't know why I've never heard anybody talk about this, but when you are stripping the leaves off these plants, you might want to wear gloves. They're not doing it just yet, but your hands will start to turn brown. All right, we have our first bucket of basil that we harvested this morning. Let's take it inside, and then this afternoon, we'll cut our horrible, worst time to cut in the afternoon basil. So it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's hot, and it's one of the worst times to harvest basil. It's gotta be like 95 out here, so this is not the time to harvest basil ideally. But, you know, sometimes things happen, so let's go ahead and harvest. All right, we'll take these inside, and I'll show you what the ones that we did earlier look like. Here is the basil from this morning. You can see we've already got some droopage going with the purple basil, and just a little bit with the green basil. But for the most part, it's still pretty good, and that's because I cut it this morning before it got too hot outside. Now, the idea is that normally within 24 hours, even this will perk back up. But it doesn't always do that. But at least the majority of it is good to go. So this is what we just got from outside. I mean, I literally just brought it in, screamed because there was a spider. But look, this is what's already happening. It's already starting to wilt. So why don't we try the boiling water method? The idea with the boiling water trick is that you're supposed to be able to basically sear the stems, and it rehydrates the blooms. So let's go with some of them and see what happens. All right, boiling water trick. I've got some boiling water right here, and I'm going to pour it into a jar. Probably should do this over the sink, but I live dangerously sometimes and stupidly. And we're gonna go take the basil that's definitely wilting, and a few old stems. And see how they do? You're supposed to submerge the stems at about 2 to 3 inches for about 30 seconds after you snip them. Where are my snips? So I'm re-snipping them, basically. All right, ready? And then into the cool water. Anything else looking droopy? There we have it. Now they're supposed to set up within an hour and be ready to go. We shall see. We'll see how they do, and let's give them maybe 2 hours max. Either way, it's supposed to be less than 24 hours. We'll see what happens. Take a look. These are still worse for wear, the ones that got the boiling water treatment. And these are a little wilty, but not too bad. I tell you, Basil is the biggest drama queen you will ever meet. She is going to look horrendous, but I bet you by tomorrow she'll look good. So we'll wait and see. All right, late evening. It's about 7:30, close to 8 o'clock. And now we'll harvest a little bit more basil and see how it does. Tell you now, it's probably gonna wilt. Okay guys, it's been over 24 hours and let's take a look at our basil. I've only got 2 buckets because I used the morning's basil to put together my bouquets, and they were just that good. They were still fresh. But in this bucket, I have the evening basil, and then I have my horrible afternoon basil. So let's look at our horrible afternoon basil first. This is also the basil that we did the boiling water treatment on. And as you can see, the boiling water method trick did revive some of the basil as far as making the leaves look better, but it still tilted over. I think if you're going to do the boiling water method, you better do it before it starts wilting, because on those that weren't tilted over yet when I did it, still look good. But the rest of them, it's kind of a hit or miss. I wouldn't really use this in a bouquet. They're not that great. If you can avoid harvesting in the middle of the day, I would definitely avoid at all costs. And then here, hit or miss again. Some of this I used for bouquets as well, and some of it got out of water while I was pulling to put in bouquets. But for the most part, it looks good. Like I said, it does wilt, but then it normally comes back. Some of it doesn't. It's kind of a hit or miss with the evening basil. So the tale of the three basils. If you can harvest in the morning, that is definitely the time to do it. Evening is the second best time, with time to let it recover. Always cut basil at least 24 hours before you need it to make sure that it will revive and not wilt in your customer's house. If you'd like to see a video on starting basil from seeds so you can grow this fantastic filler, be sure to click the video beside me. If you'd like more advice on starting a flower farm, be sure to check out the playlist beside me. I'll see y'all there. Bye.